It's been 5 years since the accident, and so, I think most would agree that I've overcome it, I've conquered it, redefined what it is to be, an amputee. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Hey everyone, Gabe Trujillo here. Welcome to another quick Quadversations. I'm your host, Gabe Trujillo, and joining me today is Diana Gibson, founder of Diana Adaptive. Diana, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Gabe. It's such a pleasure.
Perfect. Now I want to jump right in and let people know more about your story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I am a right arm amputee. I was in an accident in 2016, resulting in the amputation of my right dominant arm. It was a side-by-side accident. For those of you that don't know what a side-by-side is, it's pretty much an ATV, or most people recognize it as like a razor. And so we were camping for my husband's, best friend's birthday. And unfortunately, I got into the razor, and it was, it flipped onto its right passenger side where I was sitting. And so, I realized exactly what happened in the moment of the accident, and I knew it wasn't good. So, I was rushed to the hospital and then airlifted to a trauma hospital here in the Valley, where ultimately they weren't able to save my arm. And, I had a knee injury as well, which surprisingly enough was a little bit harder to recover from than my arm. It's crazy, but, when you just don't have an arm, you don't have to really figure out how to use it. Whereas your leg and your knee, you need to learn to walk again and be able to bend it like you did, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of my story. It's been 5 years since the accident. And so, I think most would agree that I've overcome it, I've conquered it, redefined what it is to be, an amputee. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Awesome. Now, how hard was it to transition to life as an amputee after your accident?
So, depends who you ask. For me, it was kind of a non-negotiable for me. It was, from the moment I woke up in the hospital and I kind of got my bearings and my understanding of what the heck just happened. I had my wonderful family and friends around me to support me. And they made everything so much easier. And, of course, my husband as well. He's been such a rock and a hero for me. It's been incredible. So, it was tough, right? In the beginning, it was kind of like, wow, this is my new normal. But in the moment after I woke up in the hospital and I realized kind of what happened, I thought, man, this is not going to define me. This is going to better me, and this is going to make me stronger. And in that moment, I decided that I was going to overcome it, and I'm not going to be a victim to it. That was kind of the deciding factor. And I literally remember laying in the hospital bed. I don't even believe I had my second surgery yet to kind of wrap everything up with my arm. And so it was just kind of a decision. I am not going to be defined by this. I am not going to have a victim mentality. I'm going to really flex my mental toughness and decide that this is going to help me and help others.
Now, you mentioned mental toughness. What are some of the hobbies or activities that you do to make sure you're in the right headspace and staying positive while dealing with this adversity of being an amputee?
So that's a great question. Something that's always kind of fueled my flame and really ignited this drive within me is working out. I mean, I was this very strong into the fitness community before my accident. I played soccer my whole life. I played soccer in college. So being an athlete was really kind of built into me. So, that kind of easily translated into fitness. after I stopped playing soccer. And then, the accident happened, and I was used to that lifestyle. Like I said, it was literally a part of my being. And so everybody told me, no, Diana, it's too soon. Rethink this. You've got the rest of your life to work out. But I was literally back in the gym 17 days after my accident. Thank God. My trainers were there to help me one-on-one and just kind of do some basic stuff, get me moving again. And that's really where I found my groove and was like, man, there's something here. And, people seeing me do those things was inspiring to them. And so I'm like, I really think I need to pursue this. And so to get back to your kind of original question, it was working out. It fuels my flame. It allows me to do hard things, right? And not only do hard things, but do hard things that are hard for people with two arms, right? And so it really motivates me and drives me in that area for sure.
Now, you're talking about working out. What are some of the ways you adapt your workouts to fit your new abilities?
So my husband was thankfully able to kind of, I wish I had it here, build me this cuff that I wear on my right arm. It's made out of another lifting equipment that, people that lift really heavy weights like bodybuilders, sometimes their grip strength isn't as strong as it needs to be to actually hold the weight. So there's this hook called, I believe it's made by Lifting Lab, and it's meant to go on people's wrists, right? And then there's these two hooks that you can put underneath the dumbbell or the barbell. Well, we manufactured it to be large enough to fit around my arm, because obviously my arm is larger than a wrist. And then I Velcro it as tight as I can make it. And so I'm able to literally lift dumbbells with that cuff on. I use a lot of chains, right, that, allow me to do deadlifts like everybody else does. And of course, there's other modifications out there that I've learned to do with balls, medicine balls. If I want to do a plank, I can, have my left forearm down on the ground doing a traditional plank position, but my other arm is resting on top of a medicine ball. And I still get the same core exercise as everybody else with, two arms that are able to do it, able-bodied. So I've been fortunate enough and really able to tap into some creativity when it comes to this stuff. And again, it fuels me. It's my drive. I'm like, man, how can I do a pull-up? How can I do a push-up? But the other side of this coin, and something I'm very cognizant of, is that, I truly do only have one arm now. So there's a fine line between overworking it and strengthening it to a point where I'm not crippled later on down the road and I don't have any arms, and so it's been a challenge, because I'm like, man, I want to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do all these push-ups. I'm going to do this, right? But I have to kind of take a step back and be like, what's best for me? Just take it down a notch, Diana. Chill out a little.
Well, so. It seems like you adjusted really well to this new life as a person with a disability. Now, since you become disabled, what is the biggest misconception that you found that has nothing to do with people with disabilities, or maybe something that you've thought of before you became disabled but realized that it's just definitely not the case for those with disabilities?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the name, right? Disabled? No. You're more able, right? I mean, obviously you can relate. You have to be more creative and innovative and able, right, to do things independently still when you're quote unquote disabled, right? It's literally an oxymoron to me when people say disabled. Yes, technically I'm considered that, right? But I don't think of myself like that at all. And maybe that was a misconception of mine before this happened, right? You don't really have that type of exposure normally. And so when it happens to you, the cards flip, everything's different. And you're like, man, in order to live this life and remain independent and have as typical of a life as possible, it takes a lot of mental toughness, to my point earlier. And a lot of times I find myself having to think like 3 steps ahead, right? Especially when it comes to like taking care of my daughter, right? That was something I was terrified of. Like, I literally took on anything and everything before my daughter came on. No problem, no hesitation, no apprehension, nothing. But then when I got pregnant, I was like, how am I going to take care of my daughter? And people were like, Diana, you've done everything else just fine. You've figured it out. You'll figure that out. But I guess when it's another human, you have to take that into consideration. And anyway, long story short, oftentimes I have to think 3 steps ahead, more than normal people do, to make sure that I can do the things that I need to do independently. For example, getting Olivia ready and in the car in the morning. I can't carry her in a bag and get her in the car seat and, start the car with the AC and all of the fun stuff that goes into mom life, right? So I need to think ahead. Okay, well, maybe put some toys out for her to stay occupied for like 5 minutes so I can get everything in the car, everything in place. Think about where I'm going to need it when I open the door at the daycare, right? So I can grab it and grab her. So it's all calculated. And it really takes this level of mental toughness for sure to just do basic things that everybody else is able to do. So the term disabled is not, I wish it would just go away. It's not, it's literally the complete opposite of what quote unquote people disabled are.
Now, you mentioned going through all these different adjustments. Is there one aspect of your life that you can think of that's been the hardest to adjust to since you became an amputee?
Yes. Interesting that you asked that. And I still struggle with this to this day. Accepting help, that has been the hardest part for me, for sure. I've always lived my life independently. I was raised in that fashion, right? And so when I was learning to adjust, right, I was like, absolutely not. I need to learn how to fold my laundry. I need to learn how to bring my groceries in. I need to learn how to drive, right? So these things that everybody else does, at that time in my life, I needed help with it, right? And so in the beginning, I knew that I needed to do it myself to make sure that I knew how to do it and I could do it. But now, since I've pretty much figured everything out, now is when I have to be like, okay, you can help me bring my groceries in, Or if I'm at Target and I'm trying to get Olivia in the basket and her foot is not going in the right place, somebody's like, can I help you? I'm like, you know what? Yes, you can. In the past, I'd be like, no, I'm fine. I got it. Right. So that's certainly been an adjustment and probably surprisingly the hardest part of this.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I've come across that aspect a lot since I became disabled. And it's one lesson that I had to learn very quickly because as someone who's a quadriplegic, you essentially rely on everybody for everything. And even to this day, 25 years later, it's hard for me to realize when I'm out and about and I get stuck somewhere, or if I need help with something, to try and muster up that humbleness and that courage to say, hey, would you mind helping me out with this? It's something that I'm still coming to grips with even 2 decades after the fact. So it was very interesting that you brought that kind of aspect. And that's one of the things that you think of as well, as somebody else who's dealing with something else totally different than mine, but still very similar in our situations.
Completely, yeah.
Now, you mentioned all this and you seem to have an amazing outlook. For somebody else who's in your situation, who is an amputee and is just coming across their disability, what kind of advice would you give them as they deal with this new life that they've found themselves in?
Yeah, it's kind of the premise and the foundation of Diana Adapted. And the goal with that is to prove truly anybody, right? Anybody that's able-bodied, anybody with limb difference, anybody with a disability, or anything that's challenging to them, right? You've already got the strength inside of you that you need, right? You've just never had a reason to tap into it like this before, right? And, I've said it a lot recently that, I get a lot of questions, especially early on, how do you tie your shoes? How do you put your pants on? How did you learn to write lefty? And I can't help but stop and say, if you had to put your pants on with one arm, you would figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Or you just don't wear pants. Nobody wants to do that, Or if you need to write something down and you can't type it for some reason or whatever the case may be, you're going to figure out how to write it, And so it's this strength within you that you don't even know you have, right? And that's what I would encourage anybody going through any sort of challenge or any sort of new difference, right? I don't want to call it a disability, but, just know that you've already got what it takes within you, that you can overcome it, and it's your decision whether you define it or it defines you. So.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned Diana Adapted. Tell us about this new adventure that you're going on.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. So, like I mentioned earlier, the accident happened 5 years ago, and I said early on, this happened to me for a reason. And it didn't happen to me for me to continue on my life just doing the same thing. I mentioned it, in Diana Adapted, like my favorite quote is that you've been assigned this mountain to prove to others that it can be moved. And I truly think that is what happened to me. And so it took me 5 years to figure out how I want to encapsulate this and truly use it for good. So I've developed Diana Adapted, and I won't bore you with the details, but it literally has 3 goals. The first one is, how do I show others, anybody with any problem at all, how do I show others that you've got what it takes already? And if you don't think you've got what it takes, how can I show you that you do? By showing you how I do things and how I've overcome things and how I've, strategized and innovated and figured it out, right? This world was not built for people in wheelchairs or people with one hand. It is built for people with 4 limbs and completely able-bodied. And so that's a challenge. And so the second goal of Diana Adapted is truly those people with differences, limb differences, whatever it may be. Obviously, I'm focused on those because I have experience in that area. How do I show you how to be as typical as possible in this new normal? But really the core piece of that is, how do we develop your mental toughness to decide that, you have what it takes to do whatever you want, even if, you've got a limitation now. And it's really the silver lining factor. Is it the silver lining or is it the dark cloud? Which approach are you going to choose to take throughout your life? And don't misunderstand me. There are bad days, right? I'm not preaching like sunshine and rainbows all the time, but how do you get through those dark days and really, by and large, have really happy, meaningful days in a life now? And then the third part of Diana Adapted, I know I said I was going to spare you the details, but here we go. It's kind of the business aspect of it. I go to the indoor playgrounds with my daughter, and I've got no less than 5 or 6 kids coming up to me. Where's your arm? Did you forget your arm at home? What happened to your arm? And I love it because it gives me an opportunity to share with them, like, listen, this is what happened, but I am okay. This happened to me for a reason, and it is beautiful. I am beautiful. You are beautiful. And it really allows me the opportunity to expand because kids are so curious, and it's got no filter. And where do you think they put your arm? Like, I don't know, And so, how do we help businesses brand more inclusively? It could be local businesses, it could be major businesses, right? It's a very hot topic right now, the topic of inclusion and diversity And I'm so happy that is. It's well overdue. And so how do I help businesses adapt to people like you and I, right? And then also on the flip side, how do you have people representing your brand that have differences? For example, Target. I just found out last week, I've been an amputee for 5 years. I just found out last week they've got an adaptive line. They just put out all these beautiful children's adaptive Halloween costumes. Like they can literally decorate their wheelchairs, and they've got adaptive clothing for adults as well. Tommy Hilfiger has always been a leader in this area. They've got an adaptive line. Granted, it's limited, right? Because we're a limited market, but it's something they've been doing, and nobody knows about it, right? So how do we make these major corporations, down to small businesses, truly brand in a way that's more inclusive, so that when, I do show up at the park with my daughter, maybe the children, they're always going to be curious, right? But maybe it won't be as weird to see me as somebody with one arm, So that's kind of the third goal of Diana Adapted, is to really help businesses as well. And then, through that, I'm available for, different speaking opportunities, so on and so forth. So I'm really, really excited about it. And it's taken me 5 years, but it is, I know I've got some big ideas for it, and it's only up from here. So
awesome. Now, where can somebody follow you and your journey with Diana Adapted?
So I'm at Diana Adapted on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Literally, you just type in, Diana Adapted, anywhere really, on any social media platform. I'm also at DianaAdapted.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me on the chat today. It was great to learn more about you and your journey as an amputee. And I think this is just an amazing opportunity for you to sort of spread the word of inclusion and show people that people can have various ranges of abilities and still succeed and find that happiness and success within their life. So I wish you nothing but success in your journey with this new endeavor. And thanks again for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gabe. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for listening in today. Be sure to tune in next time for another latest episode of Quick Quadversations. I'm your host, Gabe Trujillo.